We appreciate that you've taken time to be with us. So I just put my video so you get to know who you're speaking to just for a while, but I'm going to turn it off now as I go into my presentation. Okay. Okay, so Victor invited me to come and speak to you today. I would like to acknowledge that I have done a bit of an assessment of the audience that I will be speaking to. So I just want to acknowledge that there is a crisis in South Africa. We have a high unemployment rate, and people are looking for opportunities in different platforms. And clinical research is one of the solutions that can be used as a part of a structure that can create employment for many different people. As I've been introduced, my name is Bicky Mthombeni, and I will take you through this. So if you have any question, do put it on the chat box. I don't know, Victor, I'm not, okay, I'll be able to see the chat, I think, later. So I can be able to review the chat later. My agenda will include the status quo, which I basically summarize as about you. I will look at the perceived solutions, what people are basically asking about the industry status quo, and how they see the industry as part of their solution. And what else is there? What else is there in the industry? What is the value chain of clinical trials? What are the solutions? And I will go through one example of what I think is a solution. And then later on, we can have a discussion. So what is the status quo? I would like to assume, based on my assessment, that many of the participants today are people that are graduated and they possess a degree of Bachelor of Science. In my history and in the research that I've done over the years is that many people in South Africa that end up with a degree of Bachelor of Science, it's not necessarily planned to actually obtain that degree. It's usually as a result of not being able to obtain a space maybe for a medical qualification. And currently, many people are looking for employment opportunities. And if I'm incorrect, we can have that discussion later on and looking to get their foot in the industry. They want to know, how do we get into this industry that we've never heard of, even when we were studying towards this Bachelor of Science. And currently, we're looking for opportunities. But I would like to challenge you further. Are you looking for employment, or are you a scientist? Does the degree of Bachelor of Science lead you to become a scientist, or currently, what is your main purpose of wanting a foot in the industry? My presentation today will not necessarily give you the solutions, but it will actually just highlight some gaps and how we can together start filling those gaps. I don't have all the answers, but I have a lot of questions. And I think that's why I'm able to do a lot, because I ask myself many questions. So I challenge you today to think beyond just setting your foot in the industry. How far are you as a science graduate in your level of understanding of the degree that you possess? The industry status quo, the CRO market, that's what I call it, the industry status quo. How much do you know of the industry? How much insight do you have of the industry? Who is the industry? What makes up the industry? Let's say pharma companies makes the industry. Where do the pharma companies come from? Where do the CRO come from? So if somebody mentions the CRO, they will be talking about IQVIA, for example. They will be talking about PPD. These are international brands that have come into South Africa for their purpose. What I'm basically looking for from us as researchers today is, and also as scientists, how do we come up to a point where we can actually be the CROs that is penetrating other countries? So I want to challenge you to think beyond just setting your foot in the industry, because there is so many challenges also with the industry. We have seen that there's been a little bit of a decline in the number of clinical trials that are coming into South Africa. There's been a number of people that have been laid off from the clinical trials. All thanks to COVID now, we're seeing a rapid rise in activities when it comes to clinical trials in South Africa. Obviously, COVID, it's a pandemic, which obviously very soon we'll find a solution, because there's a lot of changes that are happening within the landscape. However, What is the future of the CRO? Where do you fit in the position of the CRO market? As a graduate, as a South African, as a South African person that is already in the industry, because I think there are other people that are also already in the industry. So when we have our discussion later, I want you to think about how do we take it further than having to wait for international companies to grant us employment? How do we create the employment ourselves? What is the value chain of clinical trials? I tried so hard today not to talk about clinical trials as we know them. I'm talking about a clinical trial as a project. So if you look in a project, each and every project has 5 different phases. There's a conception phase, there's a planning phase, execution phase, performance, and closure. If we were to think about the conception of a clinical trial, who comes up with, where does it start? What brings about a new clinical trial? And I think this time with the pandemic, it gave us a great example of how a new clinical trial is started. If you think about it now, we have a challenge as a nation, we have a challenge as the global world, and we need to come up with solutions that will eradicate COVID-19, for example. So who forms that team that basically conceptualize the clinical trials? Where do you want to be fitted along this space? The reason I ask this question is that the most frequently asked question, the most frequently inbox that I get is, how do I become a CRA? Do we all need to be CRAs? What else can we be? Do we have a place in the conceptualization of a clinical trial? Do we have a place in the planning of a clinical trial? Do we have a place in the execution of a clinical trial? Obviously, when you look at a CRA position, it's more of during execution, where you're collecting the data, where you're performing the quality control and quality assurance, where you're gathering the data. So we basically play more role into this. And when you look at the closure of the clinical trials, that's when all the data has been gathered, that is collected at the different sites, the patient has participated and all, but now you're at the closure. What happens once you've done the clinical trial? What happens to that data that you've been collecting? Who consolidates that data? What happens to that data? Who does the analysis of that data? As a scientist, where is your role? Or you are only looking at just setting your foot in the industry? I do admire that everything begins with setting that foot in the industry. But what then? What else that can we do to get into the industry rather than looking at the CRA position? If you look at the global landscape of clinical trials, because of the changes that are happening, we're moving more into the digitalized platform. There will be increase in remote monitoring activities, centralized monitoring. When you think of centralized monitoring, what it means is that you can have a monitor or CRA based in China that it could be responsible for South Africa, which means there will be a reduction in the need of CRAs. As an example, but then there will be a need of more people that are digital savvy, so how do you become that person that can monitor in Russia while based in South Africa? So if there was a position, for example, which says that they want someone that can speak Russian, are you available for that kind of an opportunity? So I'm just giving an example just to ignite your a way of discussion later on. So I will gladly, I will be happy if you take my points and then you plan for our discussion later on. And if you think there's something that I should go more into, you can let me know. Further to that, I look at the career opportunities based on these different stages of the value chain of clinical trial. I look at different career opportunities, which I would like to highlight today as examples. And if you have considered this kind of positions before, please let's have a discussion about it and let's share what has been the challenges for you to actually get into those kind of career opportunities. So you can look at protocol writing, for example. Who writes the protocol? How do you get into the position of becoming a protocol writer? What skills do you need to equip yourself with? What competencies do you need to equip yourself with to become a protocol writer? And who hires the protocol writers? Who are the protocol writers in South Africa for global studies, for example? And who performs the statistics when it comes to the clinical trials? The biostats. As a researcher or as a person that has already achieved maybe a graduate degree, how do you enhance your skills to end up being a biostatistician, for example? When it comes to quality assurance and quality control, you will look at monitors in most cases, but there's also auditors, there's also inspectors. What skills do you need? What is it that you need to have in your CV to become an inspector, to become an auditor? Project coordination, this is what happens at the site. What do you need to become a project coordinator? What do you need to become a site manager? What do you need to become a coordinator at site? I didn't go into detail, especially on positions that includes like your study coordination as a nurse or as an investigator, because I've seen that there's quite a lot of conversation about those, so you can find a whole lot of information about it. But supply chain, there's a lot of ancillary supplies that are needed for clinical trials. Who develops those? What is the supply chain process of clinical trials? Where is this happening? The local laboratory, the laboratories that are performing clinical trials. Do you need to be focused on what is happening in South Africa? Or do you need to have more skills that will make you a global player when it comes to clinical trials? Data management. Where are the data management companies? Today I made an example that most of the data management, most of the studies that I've worked with on, you'll find that they are based in India. Why are they not based in South Africa? When you look at central monitors, in most cases, they are based in China. Why are they located in China? What is it that we can do as South Africa to ensure that this industry really accommodate a lot more of us? And there's a lot that has been shared about regulatory positions. You can do regulatory within the pharma company, within the CRO. You can also do it within the regulator themselves, which is SAHPRA in South Africa. And who basically works at the ethics committees? That is another question. Recruitment and retention, that is very critical. Data science, it's another new field that is growing. What is it that you need to do with your basic degree? The world has become more competitive. I'll give you an example. If you were to become a central monitor, if most of the trial were to become more centralized, let's consider a CRA in Russia. If you were to think of the qualification and the skills and the competencies of a CRA in Russia, in most cases, we find that those people, because employment is very competitive in Russia, they're already medical doctors, unlike in South Africa, where most of the monitors are science graduates, if I may put it that way. In Russia, for example, a central monitor will possibly be someone with a medical degree already. So if you were a company and you needed to hire a central monitor, who would you consider? Someone that has a BSc degree or someone that has a medical degree? At the same time, how can we position ourselves as South Africans? If you look at our time zone, for example, it gives us a great positioning, because we can interact with someone that is based in the US, someone that is based in China, and someone that is based in Australia, because our time zone is really in the middle and we connect to all European countries. But someone that is based in China, for example, when the US goes to sleep, they wake up, So I think there are also other advantages of South Africa. What are our advantages to create a new portfolio of career opportunities? And this is something that you need to do on your own, because as you know, you've never heard of this while you were still working, while you were still studying, which means someone needs to drive this. And who is that person than yourself and me, for example? And I want to give you another example, because we tend to focus on what is being done by international companies. So let's focus on what can you do yourself as a researcher, because I believe as a scientist, as a science graduate, you have sufficient skills, basically sufficient basic skills to actually make you become a researcher, make you drive research in your local community, for example. All you need is your passion. It's your passion. When you have passion, you start looking at the problem. You'll find the problem. You'll find the challenge in your place. Let's take you up from some rural village in Limpopo, like where I come from, for example. If I was based there, for example, now that I know how I can implement the knowledge that I've learned throughout, I can start looking at, okay, how are they managing diabetes at the local clinic? You know, how are they treating diabetes at the local clinic? Then I start looking at what kind of training and development do I need to learn how to write a protocol, how to design a protocol, how to conduct research, and how to analyze the data, how to publish, for example. What kind of training and development do you need? Where can you find that training? You know, how can you develop yourself as a researcher so that you start working for yourself? Because I think what is basically challenging us is the waiting to get the chance to be employed. But there is a lot that we can do in the health space. And as if we do not look into this, we're going to continue having a population of people that continuously receive from outside, but never establish from their own resources, you know? So please, consider yourself as a researcher, consider yourself as a scientist already who can start finding solution for their people, for their area where they are located. Obviously, there are challenges. You need resources. You need to have a team. Do you know how to secure funding, for example? Where can you secure funding? Where from the government can you secure funding? How do we start having a community that works on this kind of issues? MRC will not employ every one of us. CSIR, for example, if we look at the local engines that are doing research, they will not employ all of us. You know, we know the challenges that we have as South Africans when it comes to the industries that we have. And if we continue doing that, we're going to have more impact. But if we all are just waiting for that call one day that someone would basically give us an opportunity, which we should, I'm not saying that is wrong. I'm just saying that the industry has constructed, you know, it's very small. As much as for other people, it seems to grow because maybe they've been there for forever. But for other people, it's very difficult to set their foot in. Okay, and I think basically that is my review of I'm not going to give you answers per se, but I want us to have a discussion about what I just shared here. And I see obviously that we already have someone that has put something there. They're introducing themselves as they have an MSc Med and they are aspiring clinical research professional. I don't know if you have more questions or you want us to have more discussion about what I just shared. And I will appreciate that. Hoping I was not talking alone.
Yeah, no, Bicky, we've heard you clearly. And I mean, I also learned quite a lot of things during your presentation. So without taking any more time, if you have a question, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask Bicky a question, or you can also send your question through the chat function. Let's make this interactive. We have about 15 minutes to go or more if we have more questions. Bicky has given us 1 hour of her time so that she can engage with everyone.
Hi, Bicky.
Hello,
Hi, how are you?
I'm good, and you?
I'm well, thanks. Yeah, thank you very much for that was quite insightful. I'm one person who's also aspiring to get into the clinical research field, but I think this has broadened my mind to think of other fields that like within the field, other options that I have. And then I just wanted to find out the data management or the data science, is it to do with data analysis, or which one is to do with data analysis here? And does it really mean that you should have a data like data science degree, or if you are well versed with data analysis, you can just try your luck and venture into that field?
So data management, I mean, we can all engage. I mean, there may be more people that are even more experience when it comes to data management. So there is the data management during the conduct of clinical trial. It encompasses the collection of the data, the cleaning of the data. That is during the conduct of the clinical trial. So these are the people that will have like develop a data management plan, which will speculate what data elements needs to be captured, and they will create systems that will also look at what data elements is not expected. So they will, it's sort of, data in clinical trials is collected in what we call source notes, transcribed into clinical case report, for example, CRF, electronic CRF these days. And through that process, there may be transcription. So that is the whole about data cleaning during the conduct of the clinical trial. So that role is not necessarily that you need to have another qualification to secure it. It's just that it's a competitive landscape. So I'm always going to be the kind of a person that says you need to sell to pitch yourself at a higher level. So you can secure a data management role with your current qualification. It's not like you need to be someone else to secure that, but it's very limited because there are companies in South Africa that provide data management services. I don't have much details, but I know companies like IQVIA, they used to do those kind of roles, but it's very limited. What I'm basically saying is that it's very limited. We are not competitive when it comes to other fields of clinical research. We're not competitive if you look at what other countries can do. And how do we bring ourselves to be more competitive also on those kind of roles so that we can create opportunities for other people. And when you look at,
Oh, okay. No, thank you. And I also wanted to understand, I actually have two questions as well. Sorry, I'm taking other people's time. On the process and the supply chain, you mentioned something about that you can actually look around and see there are a lot of things that you can actually supply that process of the supply chain. Said there are a lot of things that you can actually process, you can supply. What are some of those things that you can actually maybe look at and maybe supply? And I don't know, doesn't it have issues to do with credibility as well? Coming in there as an individual and you want to pitch maybe your products to the people, and doesn't it also disadvantage you sometimes because you won't be having much of the credibility? And the other thing as well, I wanted to find out in clinical research field, I know like in the States.
Maybe Rosa, let me answer the supply chain question and then we can get someone in opportunity and then we can.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think, Rosa, you can drop your question in the chat box while we get Bicky to respond, and then we'll take two more questions from the audience. I saw Motlabani and Margaret have a question. They've unmuted themselves. So Bicky, go ahead.
Okay, so when it comes to supply chain, so hence I put down the breakdown of a project. Think about clinical trials the same way as if you were building a bridge. What do you need when you're building a bridge? So that's what, it's a perspective that I'm bringing out to you for you to go look for information. So my aim will never be to come here and give you the actual information. I want to ignite your passion. I want you to go and start looking at those categories. For example, what is it that you can supply? Because there's different clinical trials. Some we can relate to something as simple as a centrifuge, for example. But how do we build ourselves as South African researchers and people that are informed about clinical trials to know the gaps and to find those solutions? Because the problem is that we wait for things to come to us. We don't become part of the solution. Hence, we want the finished product, which is just to work. And I know it's challenging what I'm saying because you also need a lot of resources, and our history as well, we don't have much of those resources. I'm not going to give you the detail, but you can look at it. For example, in a clinical trials, who supply, where does the medication come from? And how does it get to the research site, and how does it get to the patient? You can look at it afterwards. Okay. Victor?
Yes. Motlawani, you unmuted yourself.
Hey, Victor, how you doing?
Great, thanks, man. Your question to Bicky?
Hi,
Hi,
Bicky.
Mr. Mthombeni.
Hi, Bicky. I don't have a question. I just want to add something. Bicky, can you go to the last slide, if you can, just to add some info? But just responding to, yes, this one. Just responding to the earlier question about data management. I think the preferable degree will be biostatistics, anything to do with biostatistics. And there are more, the most organizations that do that, even in a small capacity, they are more located in Bloemfontein. And as Bicky alluded, it's for us just to do the homework and look for those who are doing that kind of a job. And IQVIA is one of those. Just in terms of training, I don't know whether I'm lucky, but I get lots of hits from LinkedIn from people asking, how do I penetrate the CRA job? And Bicky, just to emphasize what Bicky is saying, is to try as much as you can to learn the lingo. Sometimes we go to interview and we think we know, but we don't know. The most important thing is to partner, look for Bicky, for another Bicky. Bicky cannot do anything, or look for another Victor who can coach you before the interview, 2 days before the interview, to say, how do I need to respond to questions? Just to package your story correctly. In terms of training and development, there are other free websites where you can learn the lingo in clinical research. Because at the moment, no one is going to do face-to-face GCP training because of the COVID. But there are other free platforms where you can tap into. An example will be the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. They have an absolutely wonderful free training course where you can register and do all those training. And Bicky talk about the funding that is, you don't have to look for work, but you can create work. And there are, for example, NIH, talking to another colleague in the industry. NIH is one, especially when you have senior degree, your master's, your PhD. NIH is one of which is the US-based organization that fund people in developing countries to do whatever research they feel they can support. So you have to package your protocol accurately, all the documentation, and start looking for funding. You don't have, in that way, you create employment. You don't have to wait for someone to give you an employment, sorry. And that's me in short. Yeah. Thanks, Victor.
Thanks, Motlawani, for that addition. I will take Margaret.
Hello, everyone. Vicky spoke about languages in clinical trials. I think it's one of the things which is hindering most people, like to be marketable globally. How can we approach this? And also, you look at graduates. Most graduates don't have a BPharm degree to get into regulatory affairs. Isn't there a way we can maneuver, like to assist these graduates to get into regulatory affairs?
So with regulatory affairs, I think, you know what I can basically say, especially when you don't have the pharmacy degree. I've seen people that do not have a pharmacy degree that also makes it to regulatory affairs, but usually they start with they have the knowledge of the clinical trials. So I think if you want to get into regulatory affairs in most cases, you may need to start from the clinical trials, maybe through become a CRA, and then you stand better opportunities of getting to regulatory affairs. But yeah, I don't have strong knowledge on recruitment relating to regulatory affairs. But I do have people that I've worked with which just have a science degree, and they have made it to regulatory affairs.
Thanks, Bicky and Margaret.
And
Bonkubuhle?
Mhm.
Sorry.
No, I said.
Hi. All right. Hi, everyone. Hi, Bicky, Victor, and everyone else on the panel. Thank you so much for organizing such a wonderful session. Bicky, thank you for sharing. And a lot of what you're saying, really, I think a lot of us that are trying to get into the industry, we relate to what you are saying, and we've been looking for this information, but it seems to me like the clinical research industry in South Africa is a little bit hidden, as if it's so difficult to find information on websites, etc. You never know who to talk to aside from networking like we are trying to do. So I was thinking one of the reasons why maybe a lot of graduates haven't really thought about creating employment as opposed to seeking employment is the fact that we know clinical trials theoretically. We haven't had hands-on experience to know all those processes and therefore the opportunities that may come with them. So I think it would be great for some of us if we could get individuals who are already in the industry, maybe individuals who already have started their own CROs, so to speak, South African CROs who are willing to train, mentor, like Mthombeni said, train to mentor, even to allow us to shadow, because you try and look for volunteering opportunities and you're told there's a lot of red tape in terms of regulations around that. So we just need a little more information, a little more hands-on experience so that we know what there is to do. I don't know if I'm making any sense.
You are making a lot of sense. You are.
Yeah, I think Bonkubuhle, another what I've taken from Bicky's presentation is that, you know, we need to broaden our thinking. We shouldn't limit ourselves to thinking regulatory only, CRA only. There are many opportunities, and once you're in and you have that experience, you are flexible to move around. So for your entry point, you can look at other opportunities. So I'll take Sarah, and then I'll take Major. They've raised their hands.
Okay, thanks, Victor, and thanks, Bicky. I'd just like to add, someone spoke about some courses. So there's a great resource called the Global Health Training Center, which offers a lot of free e-trainings in global health research. There's some webinars, and there's also assistance there on that website with professional development, building your professional profile, creating your CV. So if you have a chance, look at that. That's really a great resource. And they keep on adding a lot of interesting courses. Plus they offer GCP, GCLP online, as well as research ethics if anyone needs that. So that's just something to add on for people who are looking to enter the industry. I work as a consultant, and I know it is tough out there in the industry, especially if you're coming freshly in and trying to become an intern and trying to develop, but don't give up. Try and work as much as you can and develop yourself, maybe even starting to work as a in a clinical trial site to develop your experience as a research assistant, to get to a study coordinator, and from there to move into monitoring. But there are lots of opportunities, and I think one just needs to be very focused and motivated and never give up. So that's just some of my own feedback. Thanks, Victor and Bicky.
Thanks, Sarah. Major, do you have something to say?
Sure. Thanks, Victor. Thanks, Ngeleti. Hi. That was a eye-opening presentation. Well done. So I just wanted to also maybe just add on to what the colleagues are saying with regards to the challenges, obviously, of entering the industry. I mean, also working in the industry, we get those kind of calls where, you know, someone says, look, I'm willing to volunteer, I'm willing to do anything. but at the same time, there are different considerations. But anyway, what I just wanted to say is that Bicky Onyeleti, you said that in the opening that most of the BSc graduates, they graduated, but this was not their first choice. So sort of this was their second choice. So I think that is also where maybe there is limitation in terms of access to information or the industry. So Mthombeni, for example, he mentioned the issue of lingo. I think that's something that colleagues should look at, consider, develop the interest into the industry and start understanding how it works. I think Sarah just mentioned what is important, the GCP certificate. I mean, that's one of the key certificates. And you interview someone who does not have a GCP certificate, and you wonder, you really want to be in this industry. So, I mean, these are some of the considerations that I can really, and also the CV. The CV must be fit for purpose. I mean, if you have participated in organizations and so on, and you are applying for a study coordinator position, those things are not necessary, are not relevant. So I think those are some of the things that I could share. But I think this was a great presentation, and it's a great initiative to you, Victor. Thanks.
Okay. So I'm just looking on the chat box. Thank you, Major, for that, and just summing up some of our discussion. And we appreciate that you also took your time to join in. There's a question here that it says, in the Western countries, there are some colleagues which offer CRA training and they claim they are internationally accredited. Are there courses applicable here in SA? Yes, I will say that I know of ACRP, for example. That is the one accrediting institution that I know it's recognized in South Africa. And if you can get yourself certified as a ACRP CRA, I think that is a really good boost. And I saw also the Society of Clinical Research Sites, like they had this past 2 weeks, they actually had they are what do you call, like if you have a 2-week period webinar, I don't even know what to call it, the way it's so long because it's been for 2 weeks. So they also do some accreditation, but the one that I know it's mostly recognized worldwide is the ACRP. And I see another question that says, may we have the links, and then we'll share the links. Sarah also shared the Global Health link. Someone also mentioned, what about CRA training in Canada? I've looked at University of London, for example. They offer a master's in clinical research. They also have a degree, a postgraduate degree in actual clinical research. I also saw in Australia, they actually have that. So I think the challenge in South Africa is that we do have, let me share my screen. I looked at, can you allow me to share the screen, Victor? Just to yeah. So let me share my screen again.
Are you able to share?
Let me see. Host as able screen sharing. And okay, as I wait for that, I see here someone is asking, how are medical advisors involved in clinical research, and is it only limited to medical doctors? I will say yes and no. So medical advisors are involved in clinical trials. So for most of the companies, they can work as medical monitors, and they are the team that do the bidding, the pre-feasibility activities, for example, because they need to map the medical need of a particular country. Remember, the clinical trials that we do must be answering to the medical need of the country. So they must do a feasibility study whenever there's a new protocol, and they engage with healthcare workers or the research site to gather information about the health need for that particular trial that they are studying. And they're also very useful during the conduct of a clinical trials where maybe there are medical related issues. They're also very useful with medical training and clinical trials. It's not all companies that have medical advisors. That's what I've seen. So it's not all companies that have medical advisors, but yes, they are involved. And I've seen where a medical advisor can be someone with a science degree, like your maybe if you have a PhD, you stand a better chance of becoming a medical advisor. And also what they call the medical science liaison. So a medical science liaison, it's another booming industry in South Africa. You work as a medical science liaison, as much as you work with the sales department, but you're more of a clinical person, because you present more data related to clinical trials to actually highlight the information that was gathered during the clinical trial. So you synthesize the information and you share it with healthcare providers in order to inform them of the new entries into the market, for example. So those are some of the roles of medical liaison, medical advisors kind of roles in this kind of setup. There's another question which says, what do you
Bicky, I would say let's wrap this one last question up and then we close off the session. I will encourage everyone to interact with you on LinkedIn. Let's engage. I've copied you on my post. So if you guys want to continue the conversation with Bicky or anyone, you can just interact under that post just so that we can just exchange information. There's request for links for trainings. If you can just put those links under that post so that if there's anyone wants to refer to that training, they can go there. So Bicky, just this one last question and then we wrap up.
Okay, so where is the question? I've moved.
What do you...
Okay, so the question is, what do you need to do medical writing? What do you need to do to become a medical writer? So in most cases, it's your medical degree, and also as a PhD, you need to know more of your medical landscape. Basically, you need to be connected to the medical field. So for example, let me say someone like me, and I've been in the industry for quite some time. Can I grow to a medical writing position? I would say yes and no. It also depends on your interest. So it's more of an experienced role. But if you start as a writer, for example, and you publish, even as a scientist, you can back up that you can actually write, so you cannot just show up and say, hey, here's my CV, I'm a medical writer. So anyway, Victor, thank you so much. And you said we must wrap up. So in my wrap up, I need to highlight that there are many other career fields in clinical trials. You need to demonstrate the knowledge and understanding of the field of clinical trial. The formal training is very important. You need to know the country where you're based. South Africa is very structural. Formal training is much more recognized than informal training. So get the formal training, obtain the right skills and the competencies, and stay relevant. We're moving into the digital landscape. Stay relevant. What are the digital solutions that are needed into clinical trials? And we do have some of the links of some universities in South Africa that are offering formal courses, including your postgraduate degrees at the different universities in South Africa. Like Stellenbosch University do have that. I know TUT also do have those kind of courses. So stay connected and keep learning. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bicky. Your presentation was very insightful. The discussion were very engaging and it was just powerful to have you here. I think we should have made it 1 hour because a lot of people are asking questions, but we'll continue this chat on LinkedIn and just network with more people. Also want to acknowledge Chrisma for sponsoring this webinar, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time. Have a good evening. And I will share this meeting on YouTube. The link will be posted soon. Have a good evening, guys. Cheers.